Hello, my name is Heidi Estrem. I'm a professor of English and the director of the first year writing program at Boise State University. I'm here to talk with you today for a couple of reasons. One is to give a faculty perspective on some of these changes, and then secondly is to talk about how we implemented them across Idaho at a range of different institutions. And then when I say these changes, I mean both placement practices and curricular structures, specifically in first year writing. Boise State University is a state college. It originally developed as also serving the junior college need in our area, and so we haven't had a community college until quite recently. And so there's actually a long and proud history of working with writers who might have been identified as developmental or remedial. And so the transition for us in some of these areas was maybe different than it would be for other schools. Our school now is considered a doctoral granting university. We no longer fill the community college role, but I work really closely with my colleagues at community colleges and at the other institutions in Idaho. The first thing the perspective I want to bring to the table is for us to really think about two areas where we communicate something to students, faculty, parents, many kinds of stakeholders. So the first question is, what story does your placement process tell students? And I think that's important to think about. When we place students, we're beginning a conversation with them. We're telling them something about who we are. And the second question is, what story does your curriculum tell your students and others about what college writing is like and what happens in those classes and who gets credit and for what? And so my goals today are to talk with you about those two questions, about both writing placement and curricular structures, because we think in Idaho that those are pretty inextricably linked, and we think they're both pretty important to reform. And then I'll describe how we've implemented some of these changes in both placement and curriculum across multiple institutions that are scattered geographically and are different in a number of ways. So first, just briefly, a tiny bit about our context. We're a rural state, not a relatively small population compared to other states. We have 3 doctoral granting institutions, although they're very different in mission and even student body size. We have a small state college and then 3 community colleges and 1 professional technical college. At the same time, another piece that's important to consider when we think about our state and how these changes unfolded is that we have a long history of collaboration among writing faculty across our state. So we had done many years of work prior to Complete College America around these very issues, around the issues of placement and curriculum. And as a faculty across the state, we are invested in having some kind of reasonable consistency among our classes. We have shared values about what we think the importance of first year writing is, and we also are mindful of wanting there to be institutional flexibility. We have had common or almost common state numbering for our courses across our state for many years, and open transfer. So our courses automatically transfer between our institutions, and so it's been important that also curricularly we're mostly on the same page. So I'll start with placement because placement comes first, and that's really our initial starting point with students. Prior to 2012, this was the placement chart that we were mandated to follow. All of our institutions are governed by the same State Board of Education. All institutions had to follow this same chart. Any writing faculty member would tell you that there are multiple problems with this. It meets none of the standards of excellent writing assessment in our field. And we actually knew on the ground at multiple institutions that it wasn't working especially well. We knew we had students who were placing into our so-called developmental courses, our non-credit bearing courses, who would have done just fine in our credit bearing courses, and we knew the opposite was happening as well. We had students that were placing too high. They were placing into our second semester course and then being set up for failure. And then institutional assessment research backed up this kind of felt sense. So on our campus, we asked our assessment office to look into whether there was any correlation. And there, at that time in 2011, there was no correlation between ACT score, SAT score, or Compass score, and then a student's actual grade in their first year writing course. There was only a weak correlation in math, but in English there was none. So during this time frame, we as faculty had been trying to work with our state board on doing some things differently with placement to better support students. So we had some pilot projects going in different ways, and then with Complete College America in the picture, then we were able to move much more quickly. And so now we've moved to multiple measures online placement process. This is not directed self-placement. Our placement process integrates multiple measures. I want to make a note to hear something that I think is important and that's been important for us in Idaho. Multiple measures does not mean multiple singular ways to get out of a class by any means possible. Instead, it means integrating multiple sources of data, reflection, and feedback to create a more informed decision. And so that's what we've done at Boise State since the fall of 2013. We have now developed and modified it for our community college partner and for the University of Idaho, and we have two more projects that will be coming online soon in our state. The other schools in our state also work from a framework of multiple measures. They're just doing things slightly differently or not using our particular online portal. But the values have been the same, even though the actual institutional practice has maybe been modified slightly. Further, with the right class, this framework that integrates multiple measures and uses an algorithm to do so, we are able to tailor it so that while the main aspects stay the same, we're using measures of student self-efficacy, their experience with reading and writing. We ask them to reflect on the course descriptions themselves. We ask them to think about what their upcoming semester is going to be like. So that all stays the same in each version of the right class. But what we can do are add modules that are appropriate to that particular campus's context. For example, our community colleges wanted to know more and have students reflect more on their experiences as readers. And so we can add that in and build it, integrate it into the right class. Another advantage of a much more flexible and robust approach to placement is that we can now tailor messaging appropriate to our campus context. So for example, if we have specific sections of first-year writing classes that meet different needs, we can add messaging pretty easily to our system so that students get that. So why does it matter? This is the largest picture that we have, the largest data set. So what this shows is in fall 2012, basically all incoming Boise State students used that placement chart. So they used their SAT, ACT, or a Compass score to place into first year writing. In the fall of 2013, we had fully implemented the right class, which integrates multiple measures. So all students completed that. The English 90 and English 101 plus course completion rates are there because we at the same time had eliminated English 90, right? So we had English 90 in the fall of 2012. By the fall of 2013, roughly the same student population, although not exactly, was in English 101 plus, passed that credit-bearing course at nearly the same rate as the students had passed English 90 in the past. But importantly, for placement purposes, for thinking about placement, in English 101, for example, the placement rate went up 5%, or excuse me, the pass rate went up 5%, and in English 102, it went up 6%. This was really big for us because these numbers are seen as these pass rates are seen as pretty good anyway. And so to have an increase of, for example, 6% in English 102 demonstrated a few things to us. In this shift from the test-based placement to using multiple measures, fewer students placed directly into our second semester course, and that was a good thing from faculty's perspective. But those who did seemed to be more ready to begin there, and so the success rates in that class went up. They also went up in English 101, even as more students placed there. So more students began in English 101, but then they were successful. And we know that first semester success critically important to later, to continuing in college and then later success. So a few things about writing placement that have come to be really important to us in Idaho, and these resonate well with the scholarship in the field of writing studies. Writing placement should be tied to the curriculum. A standardized test is not tied at all to what we do in first year writing. And so the closer that we can make the link between placement and curriculum, the better off we are. It should integrate multiple measures and integrate them, not use them separately. It should encourage self-reflection and self-awareness. Writing placement is also an indication of our values, priorities, and our respect for students. So, as much as you have the opportunity for, and every state context is different, and every institutional context is different, we have learned how important it is to really think about what our placement is communicating to students. I'll now talk briefly about the curricular structures we've changed and what that has looked like at my own institution, but then also what it's looked like at different institutions in our state. So prior to English 2012, and this is starting to, I think, look more similar across the United States, people have made these similar shifts. Prior to 2012, we had what we called English 90. This was not a credit-bearing course. Students had to pay for the credits, but it was not considered college-level credit-bearing courses, a college-level credit-bearing course. We were required by our state board to charge an additional fee. So institutionally, it in essence kind of punished a student for being placed there. These fees ranged across our institutions. Some had crept into the hundreds of dollars. Further, at our institution, students were essentially punished in some ways, in multiple ways, for taking this course. So if they passed the course, it did not count in their GPA, but if they failed, it did. And so even though English 90 as a course pedagogically was progressive and engaged students as writers, institutionally the structures made it very regressive and prohibited students in some really problematic ways from making progress. So under this old model, and this was true across our state, this model, with just slight variations in course numbering, students had to complete that course, then they would take English 101, which is our credit-bearing course, and then they would take English 102, second credit-bearing course, and they would have a student who started in English 90 would have 9 credits. Our structure now, and this is also true across our state with some variations, as I'll explain in a minute, students either begin in English 101, which is our usual 3-credit course, or they begin in what we call English 101 Plus, which is English 101 plus some additional support, which can look differently. So that's where that co-requisite model comes in. Students from both courses go into English 102, and they complete their first year writing sequence with 6 or 7 college level credits. All of this is credit bearing. A few variations, just again to point out that even though we have the same framework, we accept each other's classes for transfer, how it plays out varies according to our institutional context. So at Boise State, our model is that in one section of English 101, for example, we'll have 14 quote-unquote regular 101 students and 9 English 101 English 101 Plus students. The students in that 101 don't necessarily know who is who, and then those 9 students also have a 1-hour studio meeting, what we call a writer studio, meeting with their same 101 instructor. They're our community college partner down the road. They do this, but in a 5-credit total package. So it's 101 plus a 2-credit, 2 hours per week meeting with your same instructor. At the flagship university, they do it as 101 and then a separate studio meeting, and that studio meeting is not necessarily with the same instructor who also teaches the English 101 portion. And then at other universities and colleges, they're experimenting with 101 plus 1 credit's worth of other kinds of activities. So writing center sessions, office hour visits, tutoring, and so on. So the real implication here is that now in Idaho, all students who come to college take credit-bearing writing courses at 6 of our 8 institutions, including community colleges. There are 2 community college institutions who have kept a non-credit-bearing course, but their section numbers are dramatically reduced. They're down to 1 or 2 sections per semester instead of multiple sections. So in terms of context and scale and a few numbers, at College of Western Idaho, our community college partner, they used to, more than 1,000 students used to take non-credit-bearing courses each year, and now none do because they are all placed into credit-bearing courses. And for us, it was about 300 students a year that took non-credit-bearing courses, and now none do. A few snapshots, and I wish this data were more recent, and I hope it will be soon. Our students pass English 101 Plus actually at higher rates than students who place into English 101, where theoretically those would be stronger students. And so that additional support has additional ramifications beyond just it's not a mechanism for catching somebody up. It actually helps them succeed even better or differently than they might have in a regular English 101 class. So that's important. It's also important for us that they are staying to writing sequence, what we think of as our sequence, so English 101 and 102, they're staying there and they're completing it more quickly. This is not necessarily because I think all students should get through as quickly as possible, but because it actually is important that students stay engaged and continue with their general education credit courses so that then they can move on to other courses. So for example, what this slide shows is that students who began in English 90, after 5 semesters, 47% of them had completed English 102 successfully after 5 semesters. So that's 2.5 years. With English 101, students who began in English 101 after 2 semesters, 53% of them had completed it. And we know that number is higher now. We're just having problems tracking down that data. And so I can't wait to update this slide. So really for us in Idaho, it's been critical to think about what our curricular structures communicate to various engaged and interested parties. We want that to be a positive, proactive message about what writing is, who deserves to be in college, and what it means to be a college level student, be a college level writer. We deliberately called it English 101 Plus. And one of the critical moves from English 90 to English 101 Plus is to not see it as remediation. We did not take English 90 and just glom it on to English 101 and call it English 101 Plus. English 101 is really about supporting students in doing the work of English 101 with a little more time and a little more support. It's critical for us in Idaho that any of these models are credit bearing. That is the key to success, and it's the key to equity and fairness. It's critical to us, and this has been critical all along, that the curricular changes stem from intensive, ongoing professional development and dialogue among faculty. We have been fortunate enough to have campus-level support that has provided for very modest stipends to do some of the rethinking work that we needed to do to develop the English 101 Plus. We've also been fortunate to have the support of our State Board of Education in helping us bring together faculty from multiple institutions to really think together about what English 101 Plus, what this co-requisite model looked like, and how it might be adapted for our different institutions. And so we've had one-week institutes, we've had weekend gatherings, we still have annual meetings, and all of that has been critical. So it's really important to me as a faculty member to keep reminding myself that all of these policy changes and structural changes are really about preserving the integrity of the first-year writing experience for students and making it possible that as many of them as possible are successful and gain confidence, gain expertise while they're in that particular moment. It's not something to be gotten out of or skipped through as quickly as possible. It's really, first-year writing to me really is a gift that a university offers its students, an institution offers its students. And so my question for us then to really think about is how can we change both the invitation students get through placement and then the structures that await them when they're here. And so the perspectives I can add to you for you as you're working at your institution or across your state are on how to implement this co-requisite model at both four-year institutions and community colleges. I can help you with thinking about this 101 plus model that we've developed and how we've worked with stakeholders on our campuses, so how we've talked with advisors about what this means, how students understand it, and how important the ways in which we talk about what English 101 plus is have become for us. I'm happy to work with you on how to build faculty buy-in and how to work with faculty to rethink what it means to teach these courses. I'm very invested in all of us thinking about what it means to have genuine multiple measures placement systems for students. And then, of course, how to build support, grassroots level support for both placement and for co-requisite models. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you.